Hello and welcome to TMC. My name is Rory and today we are going to be talking about the UK's travel system, the traffic light system, red, amber and green, why it's been in the news so much, what the controversies have been surrounding it, and the kind of history of it ever since it got brought in May. If you like this kind of content, please make sure to hit the subscribe button below, like the video, you've heard it a million times before. So what's been the news this week? The news this week is that the Amber travel watch list plans that Boris Johnson suggested earlier this week have been scrapped by Boris Johnson and his government. Boris Johnson proposed what they called an Amber watch list, aka a watch list of countries that were on the Amber list to basically say, okay, these countries are currently, we are looking at them, we are reviewing them, and if we think that they are too dangerous for people to go to, then we will put them on the red list. Now, there was a lot of backlash from Conservative MPs and the travel sector in particular. The reasons for this mainly stemming over business. Of course, if you have a country that is on an amber watch list, ready to go to red, that means that people will buy less flights there, people will cancel their holiday plans, and overall for these companies that have already been hit so hard by the pandemic, things are, starting to get worse. And again, it was another really quick U-turn. This came around within, again, 24 hours, and Boris Johnson immediately hit on why he decided to kind of U-turn away from this policy.
I'm very pleased that today, because of the vaccine rollout, we're able to say to people coming back from anywhere in the EU, plus I think Switzerland, plus the United States, that they don't have to quarantine. So double jab people no longer have to quarantine. And what I want to do is obviously understand that people care very much about their holidays. People want to go abroad. I understand how much people plan, prepare for the summer holidays, but we've also got to remember that this is still a dangerous virus, and that we must try and stop variants coming in, must stop importing variants from abroad. So we have to have a balanced approach. And
citing basically, they wanted to be safe. Makes perfect sense to me. But of course, I don't know about you, but I have seen a lot in the news surrounding the implementation of this traffic light system over the past few months. And so this Amber Watch List controversy has only been the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the stuff surrounding the UK's foreign travel policy. This began in May. At the beginning of May, the government essentially wanted to roll out a new way of, dealing with foreign travel now that the country was coming out of its third lockdown. Of course, by the 17th of May, a lot of businesses were opening up. Hairdressers were set to go back to business. A lot of smaller shops were there as well. The rule of 6 was being reintroduced. It was quite a big day for the UK, and so alongside all of this, the government was like, okay, well, we need something for foreign travel, let's introduce a traffic light system. This was the initial system. There have been some rule changes over the years, but generally this has kind of been the rules for foreign travel, right? You have 3 tiers of countries. You have green, you have amber, and you have red. If you're going to go to a green destination, that's all well and good. They're the safest countries you can travel to, and upon arrival, you have to get tested, and if it's negative, you don't have to quarantine. Amber list countries, slightly more to do. You have to present a negative test upon getting to the country of your choice that's on the amber list. And when you come back, if you're fully vaccinated, you need to take a test within the next 2 days. Again, if it's negative, you're fine. If you're not vaccinated though, you need to do the quarantine for 10 days system, so the hotel quarantine. on top of getting tested twice during that 10-day period, typically on days 2 and 8. The red list countries, those are the countries that are the least safe to travel to. Typically these countries will have either really high rates of infections or low vaccination rates. Typically it's kind of both. And no matter your vaccination status, you will have to quarantine for 10 days with 2 tests upon coming back from them. On paper, this is a super simple system. You have 3 different colours. When you're booking your foreign holiday or you're looking to travel, you look at where your country is on the traffic light system and you prepare accordingly for your holiday. Countries like France right now are implementing their own version of a traffic light system. Their rules are, of course, a little bit different to ours, but that's to be expected. And they are implementing it seemingly very, very well. Why has the UK one been so controversial? Well, in the beginning of this system, when they were moving around countries from the greens and the amber lists, in the beginning they made one quite big play by moving Portugal at very short notice onto the amber list. Now, of course, 10 days quarantine, at the time, you have to remember in June there were a lot less people who were vaccinated than are now. In June, this meant that a lot of people would have had to do the hotel quarantine system, go through it and actually, stay 10 days with getting those 2 tests. So a country like Portugal, which was originally on the green list, being moved to the amber list back in June, was a very, very big deal. And it initially saw loads and loads of British holidaymakers rushing to cancel the rest of their holidays so that they can get back and not have to quarantine for 10 days.
Get back because we can't quarantine for 10 days. And all the extra costs involved in doing it because we've had to pay for new flights. So the expense of it all, it's very inconvenient. And I suppose at the end of the day, you take your chance, as we have, and we've lost out this time.
That's just one perspective from one British holidaymaker, but as you can see, loads and loads of people were trying to get back to the UK. And of course this made a lot of people very, very unhappy because, if your holiday gets cut short, of course you're going to be very, very unhappy. The next big thing that really hurt confidence in the system is when India that was back in June. I've kind of done this a bit out of order, apologies. But in May, very, very early on into the system being implemented, there was already controversy about India's place on the red list. If you remember, India was a massive epicenter for COVID-19 back in May. It had an explosion of cases, and of course it is where the Delta variant came from, or it is believed to be where the Delta variant came from. It was early in April when the Indian variant, the Delta variant, started to make its way through India and causing so much chaos and damage. And it was on the 23rd of April that all of that got sorted and actually been put onto the red list. It took exactly 2 weeks for the government to get it together and to realise that the epicenter of this new COVID outbreak, of this new variant, was to be put on the red list. And so India not being put on the red list immediately showed that the government was either too slow, in this case, to put some countries on the red list, and in some cases, too fast to put some countries onto the amber list. So it was very kind of not standardised. You never knew when your country was going to get put into a new tier and how much time you would have between the announcement and it actually taking place. And so it all got a little bit confusing. But then the government started to allow people to waive the rules. Rule Britannia, Britannia waives the rules. And of course this was most highlighted by really two cases. The first was Michael Gove. Michael Gove was alerted by the NHS Test and Trace App back in June after he went to a Champions League game in Portugal. Now, remember, Portugal was on the green list, but it was being moved to the amber list. And of course, he got notified by the Test and Trace app anyway. So whereas he wouldn't have had to quarantine because it was a green list country and he came back whilst it was still a green list country, he still needed to quarantine afterwards because he'd been alerted by the app. However, according to the government, instead of self-isolating for 10 days, Mr. Gove will take daily COVID tests as part of a pilot scheme designed to measure the testing effectiveness. You may remember this pilot scheme because this was also the same excuse that Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak used to try and get out of self-isolating when Sajid Javid tested positive for COVID-19. So already we have some people waiving the rules of having to do quarantining after they come back from foreign countries. But the big one, in my opinion, that really peeved at least me and a lot of other people is when a lot of VIPs were let into England to watch the Euros without having to do the quarantine themselves. The plan, which it was at the time, would exempt 2,500 UEFA and FIFA officials and politicians from the rules faced by other travellers. This, of course, was a huge deal. It basically said if you've got money, if you've got status, if you've got power, waive the rules. Doesn't matter anymore, you know? You can get into this country and not have to do the same testing, the same quarantine that regular people would have had to do. And of course it sparked a ton of backlash at the time, but it's one of those stories that sinks quite quickly into, you know, the history of the coronavirus pandemic because, you know, news is so fast, and of course with everything else going on at the Euros at the time, it wasn't nearly focused on as much. But it's still something that really puts a dent into the traffic light system. Because if you're willing to waive the rules for these people, why should anybody else follow the rules? You're not setting a good example. And again, one rule for regular people, no rules for the people with the money, the status, the power. There was a lot of backlash to and a lot of controversies surrounding the traffic light system. And it needed some clarification, right? And this is when, about a month after this event, we had Grant Schnaps talking about the green watch list. At this current point, aside from places moving into amber and red on quite a quick notice, and of course multiple scandals around people not self-isolating despite having done foreign travel, those were the only real problems. This is the beginning of quite a confusing turn to the amber travel list. Now, I actually quite like the green watch list idea. Essentially, the green watch list is for countries that are currently on the green list, but are being monitored to see whether they should be on the amber list or not. Of course, this is useful for if COVID cases and COVID numbers are getting worse in the region, and therefore the UK government needs to change its approach when it comes to travel from that country. The green watch list here is designed to give travellers more guidance as to which destinations are at risk of moving to the green and from green to amber. Exactly. It is a good idea, I think. To have a green watch list allows travellers to make more informed decisions and to better evaluate the risks when it comes to foreign travel. This list went to this list. Now you have green countries, which is very much still the same, but now you have a green watch list. So when you're looking for places to travel, when you're going to travel, looking at the green watch list is going to help you stay informed as to the kind of risks that you may face if you want to travel to those countries. Traffic lights don't typically have like 4 lights. They of course have like combination of lights. You have like red, amber and stuff, and flashing amber. But this, this I think is a sensible change. I don't like a lot of what the government has done, and of course we've explained a lot of the controversy surrounding this. But so far, I think this is not a terrible system. And it gives more choice and more notice regarding what customers and travellers can actually do. But then, introduced was the Amber Plus list. Now, France to move, this came out a day ago, France to move from special Amber Plus category to the regular Amber list from the 8th of August. Pretty weird. Didn't know there was a Amber Plus list. What the hell is that about? Well, essentially, from around the middle of July, when the Amber Plus list was introduced, the system went from this to this. Now, Amber List countries had two categories. You had your regular Amber List countries, which had all the same rules as you were previously aware of, and now there was Amber Plus. Amber Plus was basically just introduced to make sure that travel from France was seemingly more appealing. At least that's the kind of vibe that I get. The only country in the Amber Plus list was France. And what was different about Amber Plus to the regular Amber list? Well, regardless of your vaccination status, you needed to do a hotel quarantine with 2 tests when you arrived back in the UK from France. And I know what you're thinking. If you've read this graphic, you might be thinking, hang on a minute, isn't that literally the same as the red list countries? And you would be right. This is exactly the same policy as people coming back from red list countries have to do, except it's now called Amber Plus, and it literally applies to one country. Now things are starting to get confusing. If it wasn't enough that all of this, traffic light system was in hot water because people were breaking the rules, and sometimes, places went from green to amber or amber to red super quickly, now you have an entirely new tier for one specific country. On the surface, I might understand where the UK government is coming from. Travel from UK to France is unlike pretty much travel from the UK to any other country except maybe Ireland and like the Isle of Man and the Isle of Wight. We have a very special relationship with France because France, of course, has the Eurotunnel. It's not just people coming by plane, it's people coming by ferry, and it's people coming by train. And so you need to have a way of making sure that all of these different avenues of travel are covered. Problem is, this didn't help that. Basically, the only thing that this changed was the rules that people had to follow. There was no extra measures put in place to cover travel from France. It was literally just, okay, you've travelled from France, now you need to do this. Which is exactly what the red countries were doing. Also, by the way, the Amber Plus tier is seemingly being scrapped from the 8th of August, by the way. So yes, you learnt about the Amber Plus tier, but now Amber Plus is being completely scrapped and France is being put back on the Amber list. Cool. But then Boris Johnson wanted to put in place the Amber Watch List. Essentially the green watch list, but for countries that may go from amber to red. I thought this was a pretty sensible idea. You attach a warning to some amber list countries and you say, hey, these places might go red very soon, watch out. But of course the difference from going from green to amber is just a quarantine. The difference from going from amber to red is much more substantial, because whilst travel to amber list countries is recommended against, you're still allowed to do it. You're still allowed to travel to an amber list country, it's just not recommended. Countries on the red list are very much don't go there. Just the idea of being on the red list means that flights are going to get cancelled, less people are going to book to go there because obviously it's on the red list and there's less leeway there. And so lots of Conservative MPs came out against the Amber Watch List to essentially say, hey, don't do this. What our system was going to look like, so it's going to go from this to this. You have 2 greens, 3 ambers, and 1 red. It's cool. If your country's on the green list, that's great, but your country could always go from the green list to the green watch list. And if it's on the green watch list, well, that means your country might go to the amber list on potentially very, very short notice, meaning you might have to cancel your plans and get earlier flights and lose out on money and holiday time. Unless that country potentially is in the Amber Plus list. And if it's in the Amber Plus list, you have to follow the red list rules when it comes to arriving back here in the UK. Except the Amber Plus list is getting scrapped by the 8th of August. And now if your country is going to go on the red list, it might go on the Amber Watch list first, because the Amber Watch list is designed for Amber Watch list, the Amber list countries to potentially, be reviewed to see if they need to be going on the red list. And if they could go on the red list, then there needs to be a watch list for Amber, except that's been turned around in 24 hours because a whole bunch of my MPs went back on it and said, actually, the Amber watch list is a pretty bad idea. You probably shouldn't do it, Boris. And I said, okay, well, scrap the Amber watch list. We're now back to this. Except we're not really anymore. We're kind of back to this as of the 8th of August. You see why this gets confusing? You see why anybody who is trying to do any foreign travel right now is super confused and potentially very, very scared that their holiday could get cut short, that any visits, I mean, of course, it could be business visits, it could be visiting family that they haven't seen for a long time. You understand why these people are, on edge, and at any given moment, their, particular destination could be put on a list that means that they have to quarantine. Yeah, I'm starting to understand the frustration as well. After this U-turn, of course, you had people like Keir Starmer coming out against it to talk about how this is essentially this is basically the new summer controversy. Whereas last time it was the schools and the exams, now it's the holidays.
But the big question I have for the government is, why on earth have we had to go through this chaos to get there? And it's not the first time. Last summer we had the chaos of the exams. At Christmas we had the chaos of the Christmas mixing. And now we've had the summer of chaos about travels and holidays. Every time there's a predictable problem, the government goes through a wall of chaos before it begins to sort it out.
I don't think he's wrong. I mean, of course you can criticise Keir Starmer for many, many things, but in this instance he's right. He's right to point out all of the different crises that we've had over the COVID period, and this is just the latest one. But with all of this being said, I don't quite know where I land on this issue. If you're going on holidays abroad right now, you should be aware that you're taking a risk. I think it's very obvious that you're taking a risk when it comes to foreign travel. And so if you get stuck there, and if you get, if you do find that your country is put on the green watch list, then yeah, it might be time to come home before it may suddenly go to amber. But in the same way that I don't have much sympathy for the holidaymakers, I certainly don't have sympathy for the government. This, as Keir Starmer said, should have been a lot more simple. It should have been explained to the public a lot better. A lot of people won't have known that there is a green watch list or an amber plus tier. The rules need to be clear, concise, and explained a lot better. I think they are starting to simplify things down with the removal of stuff like Amber Plus and the U-turn on the Amber watch list. But again, it's all just super confusing. The fact that that had to happen is already the problem. The real people I have sympathy for right now is the people who have gone to see family. Yes, you could class that, I guess, as recreational, but I have a lot more sympathy for people who haven't seen their family in 18 months than people who are just looking for, a summery getaway in Spain, for example. But it is a very, very tough situation. It's something that needs a lot of care and attention, and quite frankly, I don't think that's something that this government has particularly given the situation. This is the current system of travel. If you're planning on going abroad for pretty much any reason, whether that be business or leisure or to see family, these are the rules you need to follow. Make sure to check out the government website because everything you will need in more detail is on there. I have been Rory McGowan. Make sure you put in the comments what you think about all of this fiasco. If you have any thoughts, what's your thoughts about, all of these different controversies? And I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned for TMC.